I messed up. I really thought that staying in my job that I hated was the safer option, right? Because we always hear about all these things about how the job market is so hard and that it's so hard to get a job. And then I got fired. So I'm going to tell you that story here. Because I know a lot of you are doing the exact same thing right now, right? You know that your job feels off. You know that you've been thinking about leaving for a while now. And you know that something isn't working anymore. But because you still have a paycheck, because nothing has fully blown up yet, because from the outside everything looks like fine, quote unquote, on paper, you keep telling yourself to stay just a little bit longer. And that was me. I was so tired and I was drained and I was in a role that needed every single ounce of my energy. Not only was the job itself difficult, actually maybe the job, the tasks weren't a problem, but it was mostly just every single thing that came up with it. There was so much responsibility. There's so many things going on. And again, that's not a bad thing, but when you're not being valued for what you do, when you're not getting paid the amount that you should be getting paid, over time, it doesn't feel fulfilling. At one point, already dreaming about doing something else, right? I was already thinking about leaving and I kept second guessing myself and I let that go on for months. And then out of nowhere, I got fired. So that thing that I was clinging to for stability disappeared anyway. And that's why I wanted to make this video, because I don't want you learning the lesson the hard way, just like I did. So a lot of you think that staying in a job is the lower risk option. It feels more responsible. It feels more adult. It feels less chaotic than making a move when you don't have a single detail figured out. Staying in a job that you love, that's draining you, is still a risk. And that's the whole point of this. Because I think people hear the word risk and automatically think about leaving. So leaving is risky, right? Pivoting is risky and taking a chance is very, very risky. Sure. Right? But staying in the wrong job is risky too, right? But it doesn't always look dramatic, right? Sometimes it might look like you being annoyed all the time and not knowing why. It might look like you saying I need a job every single week and still doing nothing about it. Sometimes it looks like you opening LinkedIn, typing in random job titles and hating all of them, then closing the app and then telling yourself you're going to deal with it later. It could look like you being so mentally fried by your current job that you don't have the energy to figure out what you want instead. And that is still costing you something. And I think that's what I wish I understood sooner. Right? I thought the only thing that mattered was that I still had the job. Okay, I still have income and at least some stability. But meanwhile, that job that I was putting on such a high pedestal was taking so much from me, right? It was taking my energy. It was taking my brain space. It was taking up so much room in my life that even when I was technically off work, I did not feel like I was off work. And I know some of you know exactly what I mean by that, right? You log off, but you're still annoyed and your plane's in your head and you're still dreading the next day. And you're still feeling that heaviness and that weight in the background all the time. So yes, you still have the job, but are you okay? Right? That's the question most people have to ask themselves. Because a lot of people stay in jobs that are eating them alive, literally eating them alive from the inside out because the job still exists, right? That's not the same thing as it being good for you. And I really want to talk about the kind of jobs that people get stuck the longest, because not usually the ones that are the most worst ones in the world, right? It's the jobs that are just fine. Right? So nobody's throwing chairs. Your boss isn't texting you at 11 p.m. You're not crying in the bathroom every day. Your pay even might be decent, right? Your title might be okay. Maybe people around you think you're doing great, but something still feels off. And that part really matters, right? That's literally what I teach in my career set system. Because if you don't know what kind of problem you're dealing with, you're going to keep solving the wrong one. And that's where people get themselves all twisted up, right? They feel off, but instead of slowing down and asking what is actually wrong here? What is actually going on? They jump straight into action mode. They update their resume, they start applying to random jobs, and they try to force themselves into momentum. Or they do the opposite and tell themselves to suck it up because it's not that bad, right? Both of those are horrible moves. I'll say that, okay? Because you cannot choose a smart next move if you don't even know what you're trying to get away from. And if you skip that part, you're going to end up applying to jobs that look better, but hand you the exact same role, the same problem in a different font. And that's exactly why I want people to stop treating every kind of off like it means the same thing. And sometimes you're burned out. Sometimes you're bored. Sometimes the role just doesn't fit you anymore. And it's not the same problem and they do not need the same solution. So let's actually talk about it, because this is where people start to get real answers instead of spiraling, right? So if you're burned out, usually everything feels hard, right? Not just your work, but outside your work too, right? So you log off and you still feel drained. These scaries start at Friday afternoon. You're not sitting there asking what should I do with it? If you're more why does this job suck? Why does it make me feel like a shell of myself? And that's a completely different problem, right? And so for a lot of people, it doesn't mean that they need to blow up their entire career. Sometimes they just need recovery. Sometimes they need a different environment. So sometimes a lateral move changes everything without you having to start over, right? And then there's boredom, right? Which also keeps people stuck for years because it doesn't feel dramatic enough to take seriously. So with boredom, you can do your job half asleep. So you're good at it, but you're still mentally checked out. And nothing is wrong enough to make you leave. So you end up staying, right? And then months go by and then years go by. And then the whole time you're getting more resentful because you know you're capable of more, right? But there's nowhere for that energy to go. And that usually means you need a challenge, like more stretch, more responsibility, maybe a different kind of role, maybe a smaller company where you could wear more hats and actually use your brain again. And then there is bad fit or misalignment, right? Then this one messes with people because from the outside, the job still makes sense. The job that you're in right now still makes sense, right? Might have a decent pay, a good title that you've worked super hard to get, but now it just feels like off, right? And I want to let you know, you can have two things, right? You can be really great at your job and you can still not want to be there. It can fit your resume and it can also not fit who you are right now. And a lot of people keep trying to force themselves to stay in this kind of role because they feel like they should be grateful, right? And that's usually when you're looking for a real pivot. Not because like you're lazy or anything, but because the role is just not aligned with the role of yourself that exists right now. And that's the stuff that I wish I slowed down to really look at earlier. Because when I think back on that job, the biggest mistake I made was not just staying in the job. It was staying without really being honest with myself, right? I kept treating like all this stuff that was happening to me as like this big, vague problem of me just like, I don't know what to do. Right? I was tired. I was frustrated. I was like so drained every single day, but I was not sitting down and asking, okay, like what is actually happening here? And what is this job actually doing for me? And what kind of problem am I actually solving? Instead, I kept living in that in-between space, right? Where I wasn't like happy or moving and I wasn't choosing anything forward, right? I was just kind of stuck, right? And that place is going to wear you down. That's why I really need some of you guys to like hear this part. Doing nothing is not neutral. It feels neutral because it doesn't require you to have like that courage, right? The bravery you need in the moment, but it feels neutral because you're not making some huge dramatic decision, but your life is still moving while you do that, right? Your time is still going. Your energy is still being spent. Your confidence is still getting chipped away every time you stay somewhere that already feels wrong and you talk yourself out of it again and again and again. If your only reason for staying is, well, at least it's stable. I really want you to sit with this. Stable does not mean safe. Because again, I thought that staying was a safer option and then I got fired anyway, right? So what should you actually do if you're in this spot right now? First, stop trying to fix the resume. Stop trying to go on LinkedIn and do all the things. And I know some of you guys are going to hate that, but I mean it. Okay. If you do not know what's actually wrong with your current job, you should not be making your resume the main focus yet. That's how you end up writing the same bullet points 400 times and feeling like nothing is clicking, right? And so what's happening is you're trying to fix step 4 when you haven't even handled step 1 yet, right? So step 1 is actually figuring out what the hell is going on. And that's why the first thing I tell you do is to get really brutally honest in your job. So the real honest answer, right? Does this job drain you? Does it bore you? Does it just not feel like a fit anymore? Is it all of the above? What are you trying to get away from? Because once you know that, your next move gets way easier. And the second thing I would tell you to do is to make a list of what you do not want again, right? So people think that clarity starts after knowing what you want, right? If you do enough research, you'll know exactly what you want to do. But it starts with knowing what you're absolutely done tolerating. Right? So maybe you don't want a micromanager, or you don't want everything to be fake urgent, or there's no more boring work, or you don't want to be dragging your energy of your work into your entire life. That really matters, right? Because you're not just saying, I need a new job. You're actually defining what better looks like, right? And then after, look at what you still like. Like, what do you like about your job? What current things do you like right now? What do people come to you for? What kind of work makes time move faster instead of slower? And that's the stuff you're going to start building around, right? Because we don't want you to spiral and start doing everything, because that's how people end up back in another role that looks different on paper, but is literally the exact same thing. And that's what I don't want for you. This is really about like what happened to me and what this taught me, right? Which is that waiting is not going to protect you, right? You don't get bonus points for staying in something that a fit for you anymore. And I really do not want you waiting until you get fired or burnt out to the point of collapse or so checked out that you barely recognize yourself anymore. You need to make a move before. You should. And if you want help to actually land that next role and to make sure that you're not falling in the same place, I create the career reset system. So it's going to be linked down below for you to look at. And basically what's going to do is going to help you figure out what's coming next. So you can stop guessing. You can stop doing like fake productive shit and finally get clear on what you're going to do next and how you're going to do that. Like it's going to give you the entire package, right? Because saying I need a new job is not a plan, right? And I'd really love to learn the hard way like I did. Okay. So calling you out lovingly. See you later.